Hello and welcome to 365 Days Toward Racial Change. My name is Tom Lins Nyback. We're at day 351 here. Oh boy, I see the finish line way up ahead there. But it's an encouragement. If you've done any long distance running, in my youth I've done some physical things as youth do, and when you see the end in sight, it gives you another push, another little whole point of inspiration. You find some new hidden energy that you didn't realize was left after um, the race, the tournament, whatever. So I'm getting. I've had my second win, but now I'm seeing the finish line. We're here talking about being black in America, well, being white in America. All everybody's represented when we talk about racism in America, so I don't want to confine it. But we look at the characters in this great, oh, this drama being played out on planet Earth in America, United States of America specifically. And, with that comes, the characters have certain costumes. They act in a certain way. You can have some expectations of the characters in this great drama called racism in America. Oh, it's interesting indeed, right? There appears to be no author, but it looks like it's being made up as it goes. In some ways, there's some intention. In some ways, it's equivalent to slam poetry sometimes, because you never know what's going on with this damn virus. Boy, look, I mean, the virus has caused new industries to spring up, new concerns, brand new kinds of paranoia. Maybe we'll get away from racism and get into faceism. You're not wearing a mask. You're not wearing a mask. Look at those who wear masks. And here we go again. The racism won't be along skin color, it'll be mask, and then mask color. There's the pictures. Humankind. I'm kind of on it about that this morning. I'm going to knock out a block of videos, because I'm an amateur astronomer and I love space and these phenomenal distances when you look up in the sky, um, places to contemplate that would take lifetimes to reach. If I started heading towards the nearest galaxy to the Milky Way, which is Andromeda, right? It would be generations of my line would have lived and died before we even reach the tip of the next galaxy to us. It's interesting that the nearest galaxy to us is actually hurtling at us at a phenomenal speed, but the space is so vast that it takes millennia for it to reach here. We have to come back, oh, in say a couple million years, and we'll be able to see it. We can see it with our naked eye. Um, don't You got to look in constellations and stuff like that. It's coming toward us, a whole nother galaxy, right? Oh my goodness. And anyway, Earth is such, it's as compared to the size of the universe, it is by scale. It's not even a flake of dust. It's the planet Earth is this non-entity. It's not a a body in the universe that's celestially significant. And I lay that out because what are we doing here? What are we scrapping and scraping and drugging and warring and abusing, kidnapping, incarcerating, working? Like we're doing a whole lot of superfluous activity on the planet. And it's really sad, that I have this much material to do over 180 hours worth of monologue on is pretty sad when you see how insignificant mankind is. We're so small, yet we are elbowing each other out of the way and stuff like that. It doesn't make sense to a person like me when there's plenty to go around and all this stuff. Resources. We're going to talk about that a little bit today as we get into it. No matter where you are, if you're new to the community, welcome. We're going to get into some good stuff today. Some history, wasn't aware of. I've gone over a lot of this material, but it's interesting to go back and bring out some stuff. It's like, well, okay, now that's really starting to sink in, and the historical significance of some events we talk about here are really you see how important they were in the development, that place in history. All right, I'm inspired to do this work by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. Read three of his works. I encourage you to get these. A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice. We're in this book today, page 127. We're going to talk about Texas. Everything's big in Texas. Well, Texas it's very significant historically to the United States. And Powernomics, Dr. Anderson's national plan to empower Black America. You can find Dr. Anderson on YouTube here and on the internet and powernomics.com. Behind me, you see the hashtag #us2 symbol. You'll find Black women support one another, having their community. Resources, sharing resources. Check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, kind of a Black Facebook experience. If you can't find your flavor here on the World Wide Web, do what I did. Start your project. I'm at 351 today. Can you believe it? Let's see. You got a business mind, entrepreneurial mind. Check out Dr. Boyce Watkins at the Black Business School, theblackbusinessschool.com. Check out Tyrone Gregory, the self-employed tax guy. Find him on LinkedIn. Let's see. I've dispensed with showing you The Creature from Jekyll Island. We'll kind of finish plugging that book, but it's a good thing to read for if you want to understand World Bank, world economies, Federal Reserve. There's the debate on the floor. We're going to get they're debating another stimulus package, which would be good for me. I hope I'm on that list. I was in on that first round. That felt good. $1,200. And occasionally we talk, we get into story time. The series, this project is wrapping up. I'm not sure how much more we're going to get into, but do get this book. This will help you get an understanding of racism and slavery in America. Oh, all right. Today we're in Black Labor, White Wealth. We'll talk about Texas and some important things. Page 127. And Dr. Anderson, he's talking about blacks, cotton, and the annexation of the Southwest. Very important historical things went on during this time. Um, we had this concerns the war with Mexico to kind of get a hold of some land and stuff. We'll talk about the resources. Spain, well, when the race started for the free labor um, out of Africa, free land here in the Americas, Spain was kind of mastered, the extreme southern part of the United States on down to the tip of South America. And so, as you can imagine, racism is one thing. There's we're shoulder to shoulder. Blacks and whites having their issues. Well, Spain and the colonies, the United States had their issues as well, and they weren't going to coexist very well as long as labor and land were working for the colonies. Spain had a different idea. They left off of slavery. Slavery wasn't a good fit for Spain, so you didn't have a whole lot of support. They gladly gave slaves a ride, but they didn't engage in the institution as much as colonies and other parts of the world. So if you look on your, Western Hemisphere and up north, you'll see you've got, southern tip of California is kind of cut off, and then we got the Mexico, the border of Mexico, Texas in there, southern Arizona off there, and believe it or not, at one time Florida was a Spanish territory. So if you scoop out, underneath the United States, that's what it used to just look. Um, it was truncated, but a smooth curve, right? Problem was, um, in the this is right before the Civil War. In the 1800s, there was a buildup. Um, Texas used to be all Spanish territory, Mexico's territory, and settlers were coming down with their slaves and squatting on Mexican land, and it became almost an epidemic because the land supported cotton, and um, they brought their slaves. So there it is. You got this big another land and labor issue, resonance happening right here. It's very accessible. So, the numbers of white settlers with their slaves just became a problem, and they were crowding out the Mexicans. It's the Mexicans and labor in reverse is what was happening in this Texas territory. Um, and then the Mexicans saw what was happening, and they tried to curtail it. They tried to limit immigration from up north and stuff like that. But it was too late. Um, the land, supplied cotton very well. Slaves were plentiful. I'm sure there was an uptick in the market up north as these Texas lands, and there it was given. It was the white folks were taking the land. The Dr. Anderson doesn't. His research doesn't go into any prices or exchanges. It's more like um, out of the good altruistic heart of the Mexicans, they allowed the white settlers to come down with their slaves and invade the land. Um, And this led to the war with Mexico, 1846. Um, what would happen? What happened is, the buildup, and then Mexico's like, oh, there's too many people in my house. We got to turn this around. And if you know anything about dealing with people, handling space, and stuff like that, it's so much easier to keep a maniac or a mentally unstable individual outside. They can cuss and holler and scream and whatnot. But when you let a person like that inside your house, inside your business, then you got issues. Do you call the police and do you escalate the situation? And sometimes I can speak on this because I've been in and out of shelter systems, and I've seen men and women with all kinds of mental issues. But once they're inside the facility, then you just escalated your whole problems. It's so much easier if you don't let them in the first place. Sometimes they'll go on their own, but most times I've seen you've got to get law enforcement, a goon squad to tackle them and escort them out. Well, that's what happened with Mexico. Ay caramba! You know, they had this bulge, 20,000 white folks with their slaves farming the land. And that just didn't it didn't rest and sit well with Mexico. Like I said, Spain, Mexico, they didn't have a big slavery industry. The Spanish people seemed not to, slavery just did not seem to sit well with our Spanish brothers and sisters. So you had the deadly duo, land and labor, again, coming into Mexican territory, which was soon going to be called um, Texas. Some of the so tensions rose and all this. If you remember my piece about King Kong a couple episodes ago, I don't know which number it is, but this is similar. Some the United States does. Um, it's not. I guess it's not all too common. King Kong is fiction, but it goes. It's the same idea. Like we got this problem where, as a nation, we'll go and mess with somebody and we'll poke them in their sore spot or tease somebody. You ever been in a house like that? Like I've been in places like that where I'm a real chill character. I like to be by myself, and when somebody's like coming at me, I snap, and then like when I snap, all of a sudden the whole household and the whole system is coming with its backlash. When I'm the one that's been abused and called out and stuff, like I've been watching some more of these NBA clips of fights, right? And the guys on the court is jawing and jawing and jawing and getting under the skin, and then the other opponent snaps, know, he just loses it. Um, well, that's the same thing, America does in a way. Same way with King Kong. Like you got, um, a creature, individual at home in their space. They've got a routine, all right? But here comes somebody that wants to exploit that individual or their space, and that individual lashes out, and suddenly uh, the United States is on the phone and it gets all its boys to come and just take over the area. Well, that's what happened with Mexico. They were nice and you know gave people a break and did not manage and keep up with this space that had an enormous economic potential. That was another opportunity for Mexico to get into some trade agreements, lease the land, and grab some free money from that. That's a big thing uh, Black Americans need to get with. Something I'm learning, like as I get um, some business, as I get interested in business, intellectual rights and things like that. Our white majority power group knows how to leverage that kind of thing. You get your um, resource or product registered in the Library of Congress or whatnot, patents and all that good stuff. Then you charge people to use it, make it, and things like that. Well, Mexico missed that opportunity and all that. And granted, that kind of technology in land rights and stuff was still a long way, probably a long way off. But anyway, it's the King Kong analogy, right? They were nice and all that, but then everybody invited their brothers and sisters and friends to come to Mexico, bring some slaves, and you can clean house. Well, when Mexico tried to resist that, slow some of that down, then came the big push. Big part, kind of set off the war was Mexico sacking the Alamo. A lot of stories about the Alamo. Remember the Alamo? Texans have a lot of allegiance to the Alamo and things. It's you don't talk negative or stir up any trouble around the Alamo, or you're going to get some pushback on that, especially from Texans. Well, then after the Alamo incident, President Tyler declares war, and the race is on, right? You've opened up a brand new uh, area. North American, well, the Western Hemisphere history just it follows. You follow the money, follow the resources, and that's what happened. And so today, Texas has so much more. Texas makes more cotton than I did when I just did a quick Google search. I think it's about seven other top states, and Georgia's the number two state, and it's not even close to how many bales of cotton Texas puts out per year. Texas is a monster for cotton, and so you can imagine, back then you're a poor white person. You're going to probably do some of the work yourselves, but if you can get a hold of some slaves, it's the same way technology today, although you're not dealing so much in human flesh as like in the slavery times, but you think about, you start a business, you're the manager, bookkeeper, receptionist, labor, all these things. But if you work hard and you grab more technology, you grab more resources, you grab more machinery to throw into your system, then you can ease off and watch the money roll in. So you think a poor white man or woman could um, come down to Texas, and just keep working to get one slave, another slave. Just so you start getting your slaves, and boom, you're in business. You're in business. Um, uh, with uh, with this massive influx and probably a revival of cotton and slaves, land, and all that, it really restructured, reshaped the nation as it was. This is before our major westward expansion, gold rushes out in the far west and things like that. This came, this appropriation of Mexican land and making it Texas has another aspect too, because Texas came in as a slave state, obviously, and this causes it's going to increase tensions between North and South. Try to remember, I don't repeat this much, but try to remember, the Civil War was not to free the slaves. That's a myth. That's popular stuff, and you go to Washington D.C. and you see giant Abraham Lincoln there and stuff, and people point and say he freed the slaves like he's some kind of a white savior. It wasn't about that. The slavery issue and the war was about power and how um, power was going to be dispensed and wielded in the nation. Slavery was a component of the argument, a very powerful one, because the North counted their votes. One person, had their vote. Blacks weren't voting yet, of course. So you had, white people up north with their one vote. Well, and back then, the slave master had his vote, but he also had the vote of his slaves. His slaves, if you remember, you read James Madison's notes on the Constitution, and all that. The slaves are three-fifths of a human being, and um, that resource was in the hands of slave masters. So if I've got five slaves, five black people under my control, they had no say, but they represented, a portion of a human being. Five slaves meant three votes. Just that's very simple. You look at the um, denominator, and if you have that many of the denominator, you'll have that many of the numerator, right? So one slave is three-fifths of a human being. Five slaves is three human beings. Okay, try to keep that uh, in your mind, and then you scale that. Then the South has a lot of power, or the slave states have a whole lot of power to consider. There's your tension in the Civil War. So yeah, there's a lot of interest in getting black people out from under slavery or that designation, um, but it wasn't to free them, to make them competitive and to participate in the colonial system, in America's system. It was to eradicate the power of the slave states. Try to keep that in mind. So that's another aspect of Texas coming in as a slave state, and since it's producing probably the number one export at that time of the nation, yes, Texas very powerful, very powerful. Now I've been in Texas, and um, there is kind of a spirit down there. I won't. It's too late now. I'm out of time, but maybe if we could hook up by email or something, I'll tell you a story about um, an incident I had. Bears directly on our conversation about racism. Frederick Douglass is quoted after this um, fiasco. You know, it's a part of history. What are you going to do? He's quoted as saying, Mexico seems a doomed victim to Anglo-Saxon love of dominion of land. And I put in a little sidebar, and labor. All right. Um, you know, it's this Anglo-Saxon just conquest of the world thing going on. And, you know, in our world, power just moves. And if you got what it wants, look out, because you better be ready to manage it, fight, or succumb to the wave. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. Thanks for hanging out with me, day 351. I hope I made sense about how Texas came in and how important it is it's in its relationship with slavery um, uh, and the development of the nation. You come back and see us. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.